In a world of such high pace, we need to keep up for all the sleepless nights and long days and that tiresome work hours. We needed something to help with that. There came coffee. Today, over 1 billion people drink coffee every day, and there is caffeine in that coffee. Though it can do more harm than good, and we need to be more careful about it. My name is ENG211, and today I will be talking about the effects of caffeine on our brain. Let's start off with the short-term effects. So, caffeine actually makes us more alert, more active, more energetic. How does it do that? Or have you ever heard from a friend or a coworker, I have been doing this work for hours now and I don't feel tired at all. So how does that happen? In order for me to explain it better, let's visualize it with the help of a TED video on how caffeine works. So, whenever you are awake, a neurochemical called adenosine slowly accumulates into your brain's receptors. So, this is the reason why you feel tired at the end of your day. And when we consume coffee, however, the ingredient caffeine, which has a very similar structure to that of adenosines, takes place in the receptors, therefore relieving you from feel tired. But in the long term, the brain responds to this situation by creating even more adenosine. Therefore, the second you stop drinking coffee, all the adenosine will take effect and make you feel exhausted and very sleepy. You might try to counteract that response by drinking even more coffee, which would only make things worse. It would create a loop and addiction cycle. Because when you stop taking your daily intake, you would start feeling the symptoms of withdrawal. Another part of actually a good side to caffeine is that it is proven to help reduce the risk of having Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, and even some types of cancer. Although there are other side effects, including increased heart rate and blood pressure. It can also contribute to higher levels of anxiety and insomnia. Speaking of short-term effects, let's see what caffeine does to our short-term memory. In the year 2015, the Radiological Society of North America has conducted an experiment to prove that caffeine does actually, in fact, help with our short-term memory by increasing neural activity in certain parts of the brain. Let's move on to the long-term effects. There is a great experiment that sums up the long-term effects. So let's refer to that. Jack James from Department of Psychology in National University of Ireland and Peter Rogers from Department of Experimental Psychology, University of Bristol, conducted an experiment in 2005. They asked the question whether if there is a net benefit of consuming caffeine. So they found the answer in comparing a habitual drinker and a non-habitual drinker. So if the person takes caffeine on a regular basis, then they develop a tolerance, and this actually makes it more easy to reverse the effects of withdrawal that comes due to the caffeine intake in comparison to a non-habitual drinker, obviously. However, this also resulted for the beneficial effects that came with it to be rather smaller and inconsequential for the habitual drinker. Alright, so let's move on to the next experiment that was done by El Monaim et al. In 2009. They experimented on rats to find out the effects of caffeine on blood. So here is the table for the short-term parameters. Let's take insulin as our example. The control value is 4.6. Then we introduce caffeine and it increases to 5. Then it decreases. So these values are inside the what we call a healthy individual range. So we can conclude that in short term, caffeine is actually beneficial. So let's move on to the next month, and we can see that the original value has moved to a higher level, which is 4.96. Then it decreases and then starts to increase again. Now this is unbalanced, this is unhealthy, but not so much because it is still inside the range of a healthy individual. Let's move on to the second month. Now actually we can see it more clearly now. It starts off with 4.61 and ends with 3.61. This is a drastic decrease, which also means that from which we can conclude that the long-term effect of caffeine on blood is actually unhealthy. To sum up, if we want to keep caffeine in our lives, then we need to learn how to control it so that it doesn't control us. It does come with the most benefits, but it can also do more harm than good. We need to know when to cut it off and when to use it again for our purposes. So this has been it. Thank you for listening to me. If there are any questions, I would be glad to answer them. This is my reference sheet. Thank you.